What is up, you beautiful people? Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up podcast. My name is Cameron, and I am joined, as ever, by Lewis Crawford.
Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
Hello. All good.
I'm glad
Sleepy.
to hear it. Yeah, I'm tired too. What's making you tired?
I don't know. Winter. Winter's making me tired. Well, not winter, I guess.
Do you get, like, seasonal
Dark nights.
tiredness?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it hits me so hard. Like, I can't do it. Like, when it starts getting dark at 5 p.m, my day just ends.
I don't know why, but I kind of, like, I get different vibes. Like, when it gets dark in the night, or, like, when it gets dark in early evening, I'm like, yeah, okay, the night's here. Let's do cool, dark night things. But then, when it's summer, I'm like, okay, cool, it's the summer, we've got long days. If it's anywhere in between, where it's like, it kind of feels like it's dark early, but it's not really, that's when it fucks with me.
Yeah, I get you.
But none of that is video game related, so let's jump in, as we do every week, with the news. The first piece of news is kind of a big one, but also kind of not. The Xbox One X is very, very close to release, if not coming out, and reviews are hitting. They're very mixed. Some say it's a big leap forward. Some saying it's kind of a more expensive version of what the PS4 Pro does.
Yeah, I've heard many things, and like I've read through lots of the reviews, and a lot of people are kind of saying, if you don't have an Xbox, sure. If you don't have an Xbox and you have the money, sure. If you have an Xbox, it's kind of iffy, and if you have a PS4 Pro, then probably not worth doing it. It's kind of like what I've been hearing. Even like the best review sites have all kind of been saying, if you don't have one, I don't think not many people are actually recommending like getting one, like as an upgrade, which is weird.
Yeah, I've seen the same. I think it's worth saying that no console at launch reviews as well as it turns out to be. Like, consoles get pushed in terms of their technical limits. It will always be judged more on the games library for it than the actual game itself. And we've never had a range of consoles that have been updated this regularly and this differently. So, like, you review the Xbox One now, it's a world away from where it started. And the same will be said for the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Like, initial hardware, yeah, maybe don't pick it up on launch weekend, but to be honest, you probably shouldn't pick up a console on launch weekend anyway. Like, it's just not a smart thing to do, to invest your money in hardware that nobody's really tested on a consumer scale yet. So if you're going to pick up your game, like if you're going to pick up a piece of hardware on launch weekend, you'll probably die hard for that hardware anyway. That's cool, but reviews probably won't change you much. And if the reviews have changed you, good, don't do it. Wait a month and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think like there's the hope that, at the moment people will be making games for the Xbox and then kind of upgrading them for the Xbox One X.
Yeah, hopefully.
But I mean, I look forward to if it ever happens, maybe they'll start making games for the Xbox One X and downgrading them to the Xbox One.
Yeah, I can see that.
As a PC player, I have to say that like my big dream is that kind of line of thought, because it leads to really, really good graphics on a machine that's, tooled for that. So Xbox One X could have the best looking games ever.
I mean, that's like exactly the way it happens towards the end of generations.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people design for the next generation of consoles and then scale down for the 360 or whatever. So it's not totally implausible. It would probably put a lot of work into developers, especially if we are into like an iPhone style generation where there's one of these every 3 years. But like in that sense, it might be better for longevity as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Number 2 is that a couple of things have come out of BlizzCon as we expected. There is a new Overwatch hero named Moira. Shout out to my auntie. They are a healer who deals strong damage with an orb-like system. Their videos are and announced trailers are up on YouTube right now, and this is my new queen. I cannot wait to play her.
Very good.
You should play Overwatch. I think you would like Overwatch.
Yeah, I need to get into it. I'm just so busy at the moment, going through all the October games.
You should buy an Xbox One X, and then we can like squad up on it. That's a totally worthwhile investment.
So likely.
Yep. But the bigger news that came out of BlizzCon this week is that Blizzard is to release a classic version of World of Warcraft. The game will function on the classic release, and it will have dedicated servers running to that release so that the people who want to play a classic style of World of Warcraft, rather than the version we have now with all the additions and patches and new content that's been added to it over its lifetime, will have that vanilla experience and will have it in a contained way.
See, this is really interesting because there's the community of, well, a large portion of the community have wanted it for a long time, and have complained ever since. I think it's Cataclysm is the expansion that came out like 7 years ago now, and that's pre that. Since then everyone's been complaining. So it's quite interesting really, because for one thing it splits their player base, and I'm quite surprised really that they're going to do that. It does explain why recently they actually, so you used to be able to run private servers, and a lot of people ran private servers of World of Warcraft vanilla, and they shut them all down recently.
Yeah, I saw this. There was a big kind of a big wipe of them recently.
And it kind of makes sense now that that's what this was for. So that sounds really interesting. I might actually get it. I don't know.
That's cool.
Because it's like the original experience is, I think, if I talk to any of my big friends my big Warcraft friends, I should say, big friends, my big Warcraft friends, they tell me that like nowadays it's, the grind's not there in a fun way anymore. It's not like it's so easy to get to the highest level, all this kind of stuff. I don't know how true that is, mind, but I think many people are looking forward to kind of the original experience again.
And like it's fascinating because BlizzCon this year has been really cool. There's not been like the world-shaking announcements there's been in the past couple of years. This is one of the closest ones to it, but there's not been the world-shaking announcements. But the stuff they've shown off is awesome. They showed off, from an Overwatch perspective at least, some of the designs of what the game was like before it became Overwatch. So there's like a whole story of how it was a game called Titan before it was Overwatch that was kind of scrapped and rebirthed. And they showed off what that game was like and how they use that process now to develop new characters and maps and stuff. And like from a real inside baseball perspective, it was awesome to see all this stuff and get a real sort of behind the scenes look at how this happens. So don't go into it, like if you want to watch some of the content, don't go into it expecting like Blizzard's version of E3. But if you're really into these games, check it out, because there's probably a couple of hours of stuff on YouTube this week that's totally going to just click with you and will just keep you interested for a couple of hours. It's great stuff. Moving on to the next piece of news. So I should clarify, these first three pieces of news, awesome. Big pieces of news, we really needed to discuss them. Everything after this, really minimal, very little effect on everything. Case in point, number 4, a white version of the PS4 Pro was leaked. Cool, you're welcome. Number 5, Pubbage comes out on the Xbox One on the 12th of December. As I said before, it's going into early access, which is basically beta. So what that actually means is very up in the air, but I'm taking a day off work for it. Hooray. Number 6, this is kind of ridiculous, but in a very Nintendo way. And actually in a very Rockstar way. The Nintendo Switch version of LA Noire is too big to fit on the console without a download.
Yeah, I saw this.
Wow.
Yeah, so you have to download it, right? You have to use
No, you have to put an SD card in, I think, and download the patch for it that's most of the game.
Oh, jeez.
The reason...
because they didn't want to pay for it, right? That's what I heard.
Yeah. The rumoured reason for this is that Rockstar have used cheaper carts to minimise development costs and put it onto the system. I've got to imagine that what happened is, and again, this is pure speculation, I have no fucking idea what goes on in Game Studios. Always with the yawning. I have no idea what goes on in Game Studios. This is pure speculation from my part. I've got to imagine what happened is Rockstar saw the Switch starting to sell well, and they were like, we should put something on that console. They put LA Noire on it because it's probably the least graphically intensive game they're going to release or detail in the next few years. Like, Red Dead 2, no way. GTA 5, maybe, but then they'd need all the online connection stuff sorted out. LA Noire makes a lot of sense because they've been trying to rebuild that franchise a bit. In order to minimize the cost, they said, put more time into switching the software over, we'll worry about the hardware later, and then it turns out the console is actually selling really well. This is something that could be really good for them, so they've made a bigger deal of it than they thought they should have, but not fixed any of those problems because it's too far along in the life cycle of the game at this point. Again, pure speculation. I hope this sells fantastically. I think I'm probably going to pick up a copy of it just because I love L.A. Noire. On the Xbox One, I should say, not on Switch. I don't have that. But I hope this sells really well. I hope it keeps Rockstar developing on that console. I also really hope they learn from this mistake and you can just buy a game next time.
Yeah.
And the final piece of news that leads us into our topic of the week this week is Sony. They done did one of them press conferences.
Oh, they done did it.
They done did it good, and it was at Paris Games Week this week. It was on Monday. It was actually just before. Was it Monday or Tuesday? It was Monday, wasn't it?
Yes, Monday.
It was 3 hours before we released the show, and I thought that the conference was at 3 a.m. rather than 3 p.m. So I was like, damn, we should have done our reactions to this straight after. But no, they're here now, a week after it happened. So,
perfect timing.
Yes, absolutely, on point. Lewis, do you want to start us off? You're far more positive on this one.
Okay, yeah. So it started with a pre-show that was an hour long. And this was mostly indie stuff and PSVR. Not really much was that interesting in that. But the two big bits of news from that was Guacamelee 2, which I think it's the first one was very well received. I think this is going to be just as well received. It looks really good.
Guacamelee 1 is absolutely fantastic, which is why I did my IIIs, not just like as a Mexican joke. Yeah, Guacamelee 1 is fantastic. It's such a good platformer. There's so much of it. Like, it's a really meaty game. And if you haven't played it before, now is a great time to get into it. It's basically on every system that's ever released. So play it in time for Guacamelee 2. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, and they made sure it looked similar. It looks like it's got the same kind of like style, meat and bones of it, but with little bits of extra stuff in there, little bits of extra like abilities and all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, if you look at the stream of it, straight after they show the trailer, they spend the next 5 minutes just repeating the word chicken.
Yeah, it was a bit awkward.
Because they show that basically you're now, in the previous game you were able to transform into a chicken that could kind of very lightly peck things, and now it seems that you get like extra abilities for your chicken. And so they spent, as I say, the next 5 minutes after just going, chicken attack, chicken.
Now
it was amazing.
I will say that the people who hosted that stream they're a YouTube channel called PlayStation Access or Access PlayStation, one of the two, and they're really cool. And doing that stream was a little bit awkward because it was a bit, these streams are always kind of heavily scripted. There's a bit of PR speak in them, but considering that they're from a YouTube background who are passionate about this stuff, they did a considerably better job than most people. So those 5 minutes are not too representative of how the whole thing went. Yeah,
they were very entertaining. And there was a few bits when you were like, like this is PR speak, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. And there was a few other indies at the show that were announced, like The Gardens Between, which was quite interesting. It was like the kind of, what was it described as, Two Brothers meets Braid. Yeah, it's a single player game, I believe, but like you control two different characters in a very interesting environment made up of like real life objects and islands. Mm-hmm. But it looked really quite an interesting game, manipulating time and puzzles, and the physics looked really cool. It actually kind of surprised me how good it looked. It's the kind of thing that's like, I'm sure it's got some indie artsy story that I complain about.
Well, it's got a very what's the game that Tim Schafer did with Elijah Wood? They crowdfunded it. It was really big on crowdfunding. It was in 2 parts.
I played it.
God damn it! I'm gonna have to Google it now. Please entertain yourselves for 2 seconds.
Broken Age.
Fuck it, Broken Age. That's the one.
Yeah.
It's got a very Broken Age art style, and it looks generally like a very kind of Tim Schafer-y indie kind of game in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that looked really interesting. We saw the next Final Fantasy 15 expansion, which they keep doing. And they showed loads of PSVR stuff, and I kind of switched off a bit, but it was clear that, like, at least in the pre-show, PSVR featured quite heavily.
Yeah.
Sony are making, I think currently they're the only ones making really good leads on it, but yeah, so there was lots of VR in the talk. They showed the Final Fantasy VR fishing game. They're still trying to kind of hype it up as being like, you get to be in the world, but then you also, I don't know, like they seem to be really pushing it, and I don't know if it's going to really do as well as they want it to.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump off that point. There was one more big announcement that you didn't capture.
I've still got stuff to do.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. Carry on.
No, please.
Spelunky 2?
Yeah. I was getting there. Yeah, so Spelunky 2. They did what all good trailers do and only announced the title right at the end. But the strange thing I have to say about this is that just before they played it, they were like, I'm not sure if this was like meant to surprise us more, because they said, "Oh, this is something different from the developer," or something like that. I don't know if you caught this, but they just before they announced, they played the trailer. It was like, "Here's something different," in like a
new way, and then just announce the sequel.
Yeah, that's what it made it.
I didn't catch it, but it was a weirdly, like, the pace up to that announcement was very weird. I certainly wasn't expecting it when the game came on.
Yeah.
In terms of the pre-show, I was like, I really wasn't expecting anything from the show. And no offense to anyone, it's just because, like, you rarely get bigger shows than E3. And the way this was being talked about, it was like on the same level as, and I was really, really critical of it. But when the pre-show came on and they were like, Guacamelee 2, Spelunky 2, and a VR game I'll talk about in a second, I was like, oh, okay, shit, Sony might actually have something here. And that kind of fell flat after that point. Blood and Truth was the biggest VR game that was talked about, which was, if anyone knows about PSVR, sort of before it was officially released, there was a demo for it called The Heist, which was made by Sony London. I think it's Sony London. It's a UK Sony studio. And it's like a London gangster heist movie. It's kind of like a Guy Ritchie film, but with less swearing and more VR gameplay. And what you do is, it's like a kind of... It's not a cover-based shooter because you don't snap into it, but it is in that you hide behind cover in like a VR world. So it's kind of a shooter in which you take part in a heist, but just in VR. I think it's really cool to see that. I'm going to say this game has become Blood and Truth. I don't know that, but it looks like it has to some extent. Certainly a lot of the touchstones of both are similar. And it's really cool that this has become something more than just a tech demo, or inspired something more than just a tech demo. I think this is definitely the kind of thing that VR can be used for, and I'd be fascinated to know how meaty an experience this is. I hope it's more than just kind of 2 heists in an hour and a half, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's like ultimately the main problem that we have with VR at the moment, at least in my mind, as consumers, as opposed to maybe enthusiasts. Like, there isn't enough meaty VR content out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was, maybe I would get something. At the moment, it kind of seems to be very limited to kind of like half an hour experiences.
The pre-show was the best bit of the show for me personally. I didn't find much interest in the main show, and the pre-show is like has left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth for a weird reason. I was super excited when they announced Guacamelee. I was super down as to, you know, what that means for the games and what it meant for the future of the show, and that was the thing that probably stayed with me the most, even with the bigger announcements in the main show. Guacamelee was the thing that stuck with me the most. But and I must be flogging a dead horse here, but it's suffering once again from a lack of exclusivity commitment. The official line of comment from Drinkbox, who are making it, is, we are only focused on the PS4 version at the minute. But, like, do you remember a couple of years ago when everybody said, oh, Microsoft are only making games for the Xbox One and Windows 10, why would I buy the console?
Yeah.
Like, with people not concretely commenting on exclusives, why would I pick up a console for a game I don't know if it's going to be exclusive or not?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fair.
Like, Guacamelee is an awesome fucking game, and the sequel being, like, a big advancement, and especially couch co-op multiplayer on it, like 4-player at least, that's awesome. That's the kind of stuff that will build up and make me buy a console. But it's the problem I have with a lot of these shows, that the PR speak came out first, and the actual holes in the PR speak came out later. And it's such a shame that it seems to undercut these conferences so often in that way.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess it is worrying that maybe it's not coming to Xbox. At least, well, I don't know.
Well, no, like, if it's not coming to Xbox, fair enough. The first one didn't for years.
Yeah, that's true. Say
that. And then we got on to the main show. There were quite a few trailers of stuff shown. We'll get on to, like... Do you think it's fair to say the Sucker Punch thing was the big announcement of it?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so we'll get on to the Sucker Punch thing last. One of the main things that was discussed was there was another new trailer for Spider-Man.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
So this has actually put me in a much more positive light about that Spider-Man game. I think, like, the previous trailer was, QTE heavy. And also maybe it showed, like, the combat and stuff, but the bit that I was really more interested in was seeing if they were going to go with story. And this trailer really seemed to push the story angle.
Yes, definitely.
You know, I think that's kind of like, say what you like about the whole conference, but I think, like, I can kind of say what each trailer was meant to do. And I think in regards to that, each trailer kind of hit what it was meant to be hitting. So in the case of Spider-Man, they wanted to show that they're putting their spin on, they're doing their story, they're doing their elements that they work quite well on. Mm-hmm. And it really kind of showed in this trailer that that's what they're going for.
Yeah, and it added a lot of context. So it added a lot of Miles Morales context, which is awesome. It told you a lot about where Peter Parker was in his life, so where this is set, and how it kind of clicks into any of the Marvel games that might or might not be connected to it. It gave a lot more detail than I expected to hear about the antagonist and where their kind of origin was. And then it also gave us, I don't know whether this was during the show or post the show, I think it was post, but it gave us the details that Mary Jane is a playable character.
Yeah, I heard this.
Which is awesome, frankly.
Yeah, it's very cool. So I think, like, coming out of it, they've done pretty well, actually, because I think, like, people were a little bit unsure. I think this has made a lot more people happier about it. There's probably still some doubt, but yeah.
I think I'm still holding off until we see, like, proper gameplay, especially with them still saying 2018.
Yeah, but
I'm still worried about that.
Wait, you worried that it's too soon or too late?
No, I'm worried it's either it's very soon and we've seen little other than pre-rendered cinematic stuff.
Yeah, true.
I mean, like, yes, okay, we saw gameplay at E3, but we haven't really seen, like, hands-on real gameplay. Like, we've seen offhand stuff on a screen, if that makes sense, and that always worries me. I remember a couple of years ago when Sony did the Last of Us demo, the big one that ended E3, and the nice bit about it was that there was somebody on stage playing it, and I think, that's usually fake anyway, but I think I'd probably feel more genuine about it if it felt like this was something you could play, which it kind of doesn't at the minute.
Yeah, that's true, but I guess it's hard to say, because I mean, like, I remember when Horizon, the trailer for that was like a complete game by the time they showed the trailer. But then it was like 2 years after that it released, so I don't know. I guess it's there might be a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. It might be too soon, you're right. But I don't know. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes as well.
There were a couple of other big things that were discussed. God of War got a big new trailer.
Yeah, so if I talk about what each trailer tried to accomplish, God of War, this trailer was very much focused on combat. I think one of the big comments that was made that they've kind of seen was made at the previous trailers was that combat looked really slow. I think that's what people were kind of saying about it at E3. They tried here to kind of really show that combat's a lot faster than you might think. It's still not like it doesn't look like it's a button masher much anymore, as opposed to the original series. But it looks quite good. And I think they tried to make sure that it looks like you can really interact with stuff. You can interact with the environment. Kratos has loads of weapons now, and things are a bit different.
And then one of the other big things that was announced was a game called Concrete Genie, which looks amazing. Yeah,
this looks beautiful.
Absolutely.
So it's a very reminiscent. So the whole game is set around a very reminiscent environment of, like, especially for me living in London, it's very kind of European. It's set in like a very European streets kind of style.
It's a concrete jungle, right?
Yeah, concrete jungle. And yet your character is able to kind of paint on walls and make these very living worlds, I guess, these 2D living worlds. Would you say? Like with like running water and monsters and creatures and
yeah, you use them as your canvases for art.
Yeah, and it shows how, like, you start off in this very dark atmosphere and it becomes brighter and brighter as you go along, and then, like, it seems that, like, your drawings can also help you through the world. Later on, it showed, like, you could, like, go through doors or something by, like, setting fire to them. It looks really interesting, but I don't know whether it's going to attract many people, to be honest with you, just because it's kind of it's very niche, I guess. It's very artsy, but it looked interesting.
I don't disagree with you about it being niche, but I think it might stand out more than you think. Like, in a year surrounded by Spider-Man and God of War, it might actually be the change in pace that's good for people.
Yeah, true. It's the kind of thing that goes underneath the radar, but then it is seen as a big thing later on, I guess. Like lots of these indies of that kind of sort, they rise in popularity as time goes on, whereas, like, most games are as popular during their week of, like, release.
And then the final big thing that was announced is, I'm going to try really carefully to say this properly. I'm sorry if I don't.
Zero chance.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Thank you. Ghost of Tsushima is a sucker punch game that seems to be centered around... Oh, hold on. That is described as an open-world adventure, and it seems to be set around Japanese, I'm going to assume.
Yes.
I should probably look at it. I just don't want to assume. Like,
no,
I should look this up. Do you want to talk about it? You know more than me.
Yeah, so this centered around, I don't know that much more than you, I'll be honest with you. But it's very much an environment that people have been looking for quite a while, actually, because it's been a long time since we had the oh no, now I'm the one that's gone blank. The old Ninja games. What are they called?
Ninja Gaiden?
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden. It's been a very long time since we had those games. And now people have been looking for I guess a Neo, but that kind of style, that kind of environment, that kind of world. And so Ghost of Tsushima has you as I'm a bit unsure whether you're a samurai or a ninja. There seems to be kind of like dubious about which one, or about what it kind of revolves around.
So, from what I'm reading online, the game is set roughly around 1274, and it's samurai warriors, apparently. It seems to be set around the Mongol Empire invasion, of the invasion of the island of Tsushima, and how you as a character interact with that. Yeah,
the trailer was beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, it looked about as good as CG can, I think. But it's still not in game. It's still not like a gameplay, but it looked amazing. I think it's drawn a lot of attention. Because I think like it's the only kind of environment that we haven't really had open world. It's the only kind of like it's one of the theme is one of the only places that hasn't really been done enough, I guess. I guess you could argue that's because of Western development, but
I mean, people have been asking this from Assassin's Creed for literally decades,
definitely.
so I'm glad that it's finally coming to us. Again, like CG trailer, so as a tone piece, it was awesome, and it definitely is a niche that people have been wanting. Apparently, the game has been in development for over 3 years. Shuhei Yoshida has been saying quite consistently that he's been playing Sucker Punch's game for a while and he's very excited about it. So it seems like they've been working on this for quite a while. How far along it is, we don't really know. How far along it is in terms of when it will release, we don't really know. And what it will look like when it plays, we don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, as you say, as a tone setter, this is kind of very much got people excited. I'm looking forward to seeing what it actually plays like, though. Obviously, that's always the thing with these CG trailers, is that really you just want to see the game, and we don't know right now. But the theme and the details they said about it afterwards, about like it being open world and it being a samurai and all of this has me very interested. Has me watching the news.
So, from a general sense, what were your thoughts on this press conference?
So I mean, like it wasn't knockout, obviously, but I think in terms of what they went out to do, each trailer kind of proves a point. I think one of the ones that we skipped over actually is Last of Us trailer Part 2.
Oh wait, yeah, shit, of course. What did you think of that?
So it was a very graphic, very kind of nasty trailer, I guess.
Very graphic,
and it's drawn quite a lot of attention. But I think it's kind of got me more interested because it's kind of like they're saying this is an adult world. This is, not. It is an adult. I think actually that's what was said afterwards, is that it's an adult game for adults, and so they're not afraid to kind of make it very dark. So yeah, like I think it's got people talking.
it has, and I'm not really sure what I think about it. I find violence in video games a very odd thing. I find it's very hard to like skip the line between graphic and too graphic. And I think for the most part in the trailer I was engaged, if not impressed. But the clip their wings moment made me feel a little uncomfortable. What made me feel a lot more uncomfortable was David Cage's trailer, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I don't know. There was a thing that Max Scoville put out from IGN this week, which was a sort of 7-minute opinion piece about how the trailer missed the mark because it tried to define an adult world purely as violent. And I think there was a bit more to the trailer than that, and I'm very much simplifying what he said. I think the trailer was a little bit more than just violent, but I do agree that this didn't do for me what the trailer before did. I watched the trailer, the first trailer, the teaser for The Last of Us 2, sort of on loop for the last 5 minutes before the conference, and like it sent shivers down me. And I don't like The Last of Us. I've never played The Last of Us. It doesn't connect with me. But the way they captured the tone of like Logan or The Road or these very, very gritty, adult, mature stories without having to be graphic or without having to resort to anything sort of 2R rated is something that's very, very unique. And this trailer didn't have that for me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I don't know. I think in the first game, the way that they got around that was by having lots of things happen. Like you'd find things that had happened. Because the first games, apart from at the start, didn't really go as far as this trailer did. They're setting a tone that's a little bit different from the first game. The first game was dark, don't get me wrong, but it didn't really go this far.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point, if I'm not mistaken, was to be a bit kind of, look, we're going worse with it. And like it fits in with the tone. The guys who are making it have said that the first game was about one thing, was about love and hope. This is about hate, and so I'm not like saying it's going to be about this and that's dumb is obviously way too far along at this point. But I don't know, it didn't catch me in the way that I wanted it to. The thing that made me really uncomfortable in this press conference was the trailer for Become Human, Detroit Become Human. I felt super uncomfortable during that whole trailer. To give it some context, the trailer shows a family household with an AI, I guess, an android, a robot, however you want to describe it, who looks after the family and does domestic jobs and is basically like a housekeeper robot. But this robot has been reset after they got in the way of domestic abuse, and then the trailer plays out the scenario of if the robot comes back and can make that choice again, are they subservient or not? It's undeniably powerful, but I felt super uncomfortable that I could play a game where that choice is put in my hands. Like that maybe it's a case of my own naivety or something like that, but even in a video game that felt like a lot of responsibility in a moral sense.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I think I tend to distance myself quite a bit. But yeah, like I think that was another one that kind of the tone was very different from what people expected. And then it's kind of like there's always two sides to this. There's always one side that says like I hate it now, and another side, and then the other side that goes like, oh, I'm really excited that it's going down a darker route. So it always splits opinion, does kind of graphic or psychological trailers or content.
And I mean, David Cage is known as like he's known as somebody who deals with controversial topics. He's known as somebody who deals with heavy games, and I don't think anybody was going into Detroit Become Human thinking, oh, this is going to be a light romp. But I don't know it. Maybe even it was just the way that the trailer was presented and the way you didn't get, it was very quick as a trailer, because it's a trailer. But it just made me uncomfortable, and I think it would be really interesting to see how games deal with that as they try and cope with more mature stories.
Yeah.
So you were sort of okay on this conference.
Yeah, I mean, so I think like there was quite a few things that came out, and nothing too major, but a lot of things that kind of like things I was unsure of are now being like pushed into more and more certainty. Like I was a little bit unsure about Monster Hunter World. To mention another trailer we skipped over, but it's not as interesting, but it looks very good. I was unsure of it, and it's kind of like pushed me more into the kind of like I will get it.
Okay.
It's although apart from maybe Ghost of Tsushima, and a few other things there, like it still makes me feel like I've made the right choice by having a PS4. It still kind of like makes me excited for the future. I think we've all been spoiled by them in the last 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we all got spoiled by them. And I think that's one of the problems, I guess, is that nowadays we always compare to that. We always compare to E3, 2015, 2016, where they had like the 2 biggest announcements ever of all time. So like, I think comparison to that, yeah, okay, I agree with you. In comparison to E3 this year, it's kind of, I don't know, actually. I think that E3 was quite, in comparison, dull this year, but I think in terms of this being like E3, I don't think it was that far away. But that says more about E3 than it does about this.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. It does say more about E3 than... It says more about the kind of height that E3 can get to than the lows this arguably went to. I was unimpressed generally. It wasn't anything really, like nothing in it particularly did much for me other than Guacamelee and Concrete Genie. I love the look of Concrete Genie, but I don't know, like I'm not a big God of War fan, so God of War trailer didn't do much. I'm super interested in The Last of Us, but the trailer didn't hit me in the right way. And I think maybe I was just expecting a little more out of it than we got. I'm worried that there weren't many release dates. Like, we were kind of thinking this would be the point at which we get release dates for some things, and they weren't there. Like,
yeah, that's totally true.
Like, Dreams wasn't there as well, and this is where they kind of dealt more with their European-centric developers, especially with the Sony UK. I'm going to say Sony London, but I don't know. Sony London VR game. So, like, it was fine. It was a conference that was functional, and I look forward to E3.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't get anything, like, big from, I guess, the biggest things that Sony have at the moment. Like Death Stranding, which is what everyone wants to see. So we didn't, or like Final Fantasy, we didn't get anything of that kind of hugeness. I think in general there wasn't too many lows in it. I think it was mostly good.
No, that's true. That is true, I will say.
I think, like, at the end of the day, like, they've never been that big announcements at these conferences. Although I'm half tempted to say Last of Us Part 2 was announced PlayStation Experience.
Now, this is something I will jump on, is I've heard that a lot of the announcements that would have happened for PSX were done in this show, which worries me. Yeah.
The thing is that, like, I think one of the reasons why we've ended up being spoiled previously is we now kind of know what everyone's doing. There isn't, like, as in we know what everyone's doing in terms of, like, first party at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they couldn't really surprise us again. I think, like, for the next few, maybe even the next E3, we're going to just have, here's things you mostly know about already, and the new Assassin's Creed game. Because they never learn.
Well, dude, you say that, but it may be like, here's all the first-party console games you know are being made already. Oh, and Ubisoft got bought by Vivendi.
Yeah, no more games. Yeah, like, I think the thing is, at the end of the day, is we're looking at, these are all games that are going to release towards the end of the PS4 cycle. As in, like, maybe like a year or two before the PS5 comes out. And I think that's the same kind of thing we're seeing. The same, like, trailers that we're seeing over and over, or the same content we're seeing over and over, is stuff that's towards the end. And I think, like, that's always kind of been the case. You know, a new console cycle starts, all the big announcements come, but then all the games kind of come later. So that wouldn't surprise me. If you look at, like, Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah, true.
That came out right at the end of the cycle, so I think there is going to be a bit of a lull.
I'm holding out hope for next year, because I think...
You just want to be hyped.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of do, but I think you tend to go in a cycle where you get something massive, something unexpected, and then... No, hold on. I think you tend to go in a cycle where you go something expected, something massive, something unexpected, right? Like,
yeah.
The start of the generation is always, here are the big franchises that you know will be the tentpoles for these consoles, or the tentpoles for the year going forward. Then kind of mid-generation, it's here's the stuff that you didn't think would happen. And then towards the end of it, it's like, here's the stuff that's actually going to define that generation.
Yeah.
The more towards the end of it. And I'm kind of holding out hope that, I mean, we're in, the fourth year of this generation now? The fifth year of it? And so, you know, we might start looking to wrap up what it is, or move towards the next generation of stuff, which seems odd, like there's a console releasing next week. But I'm kind of holding out hope that next year there will be something that we didn't expect, not something... Like, Concrete Genie is that kind of game, right? Like... It's not massive, it's not going to blow anyone away, but it could well be the kind of thing that sets the pace of the generation going forward. So I'm hoping more for, like, Concrete Genie levels of announcements than like, I don't know, Crackdown 4 or whatever people will promise.
Crackdown 4.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm holding out hope still, but that may well prove to be unfounded.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think, like, you can never really tell when things are going to come out and when news is going to happen.
Exactly.
You know, like, we're bound... I think, in spite of them saying that everything's been moved back, I'd be surprised if there isn't at least something at PSX. Whether it's something smaller than something large, we'll see, but I don't know.
I don't know. Speaking of, you said you don't really know when news is going to happen. You are absolutely right. In the time that we've taken to record this episode, a massive rumour has come out. The rumour is that next week, the Game Informer cover that will be announced will be Rocksteady's new game, and it's Superman. And it's like
I heard
the size of. But in the time that we've taken, this has been fully, properly rumored and debunked.
Yeah.
So might be a Rocksteady game, probably not. That's how the news works.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
But I think that's a really nice point to leave it on for this week.
Okay.
So for you, it was a Paris Games strong. For me, it was a Paris Games week. And with that, we will see you next week for the latest episode of Games Up. Remember, you can find us every Monday at 6:30 p.m. on YouTube and much, much earlier that day on iTunes, so you can catch it on your way to work. We would love it if you felt like subscribing to the show so that you didn't miss anything we put out, and if you liked it so that we could go in front of a few more people, because we think that we're okay at this. Okay, at least. Functional at best. We will see you then, Lewis. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for joining me.
Oh, yeah. You're welcome.
It's my show now.
Look at me. I'm the captain now. Thanks very much, everyone. See you next week. And until then, the game is up.